Indie games have seen a significant rise throughout the last decade. They were once a niche category of games as they had minimal budgets in addition to lack of immersion with their 2D styles or lack of voice acting. Nowadays, however, we have websites, YouTubers, and a general gaming community constantly on the lookout for the best indie games releasing. They also even encompass some of the best reviewed games, being loved for their innovation and in times where AAA games are disregarding creativity. The low price tags are appealing too, and all their benefits culminate into people who would never even consider the genre playing the games they had to offer. Taking into account the relatively small releases, there's numerous hidden gems or even games that are well known in the indie space but didn't receive widespread recognition. Everyone has different opinions regarding what those games are, pertaining to games they actually played and their general interests. Now, this game titled Afterimage is a game I randomly found while I was scrolling through Steam's recommended page during one of the seasonal sales. It seemed interesting from the images as well as the videos the game's page displayed, and I decided to purchase it. As I played it, I immediately realized that it was underrated, considering its impact and reviews on the game. Afterimage is an aesthetically pleasing hand-drawn 2D Metroidvania, mostly focusing on exploration and deep lore. Despite being decently popular in the niche communities of Metroidvania spaces, it completely flew under people's radar. Thus, let's explore the different aspects of Afterimage and why it's one of the greatest indies, considering its immensely high quality that is unprecedented for an indie title. To introduce the game, Afterimage follows Renee and her fiery companion Ifri as they go on a journey to retrace her steps and recover her past. Renee has lost her memory due to a war that took place many years before the events of the game. At the start of the game, the village she lives in is suddenly attacked by powerful beasts. Her master Eros attempts to protect the village by casting a forbidden spell that weakens the monsters but is not enough to defeat them. During the chaos, a mysterious figure appears and captures Eros' soul. Renee tries to stop this person but fails and they vanish. With her village destroyed and her mentor taken, Renee sets out to explore and garden, track down this mysterious individual, and recover Eris' soul. Now that the plot of the game is out the way, let's discuss its many redeeming qualities. For starters, the amount of content in the game is atypical for a Metroidvania. To say Afterimage is massive is an understatement. It legitimately competes with AAA games. In fact, the game is so packed with content, people sometimes complain about its size, saying it drags on for hours and hours, and there's an overabundance of collectibles or quests to complete. However, this shouldn't be perceived as a negative, with how it's split up, in combination with matching the other bigger games releasing today. The primary reason for the high amount of content is the overall map size. Afterimage follows the customary format of world design for Metroidvanias, as there's a multitude of locations. The majority of them are connected, and you need to discover different paths to progress through them. Altogether, they equal to 25 areas by the time you finish the game. Supplementing the amount of areas to explore, they're mostly designed vertically, as there's platforming or walls to climb to reach higher sections of the map. This means the areas change a vast amount, causing differences in style even in the same location. For reference to a game of a similar style, Hollow Knight only has 16 areas, and I'm certain you're aware of the praise it receives for its unique map structure and many areas. It's enjoyable figuring out where to go next, as the possibilities literally feel endless sometimes. The game also provides you zero clues to continue progression, besides short dialogue sequences between characters. You could explore an entire large area, only to realize it isn't the correct place to go, and have to backtrack thoroughly, explore another area for secrets, or play a completely new one. This format is favorable due to the obscurity promoting a more involved and curious playstyle that's similar to an open world game, despite being a 2D game with closed off locations. Now the detail on each of these regions is meticulous, and the immense effort put into it results in a breathtaking game. This is easily viewable in the backgrounds of worlds, where there's constantly moving leaves, winds, or other environmental effects that match the theme of the area. The non-stagnant backgrounds of worlds definitely add to the game's immersion, and again is abnormal for smaller scale 2D games. Okay, I might repeat that a lot in this video, but hopefully you're getting the point. For a particular example of this, the location called the Field of Hydro is one of the most appealing locations in the game, with it having the game's signature vibrant art style and multiple swimming sections. It marks a major moment in the game, as you finally meet Eros, who reveals surprising information about what occurred at the start of the game. A minor but impactful detail affecting the look of the area is near arrows, where you can clearly see numerous folding petals surrounding her. In tandem with the bright blue colors, it's entrancing to stand near her, enhancing the already climactic moment in the game. Furthermore, the areas in Afterimage each have distinct themes that help them stand out. For instance, the town of Exile presents a darker, oppressive atmosphere using dull colors to match its toxic environment filled with poisonous gas and these small purple-tinted enemies that follow you around. In contrast, the Holy Grounds exude a feeling of a royal capital, populated by heavily armored knights carrying massive swords and adorned with a consistent gold, white, and brown color palette throughout. I personally enjoy this location's theme variety, as it's often a downside in other Metroidvanias, presumably due to the resources it requires for small development teams. This extensive detail and assortment of themes further demonstrate the concept Afterimage isn't an average indie game. Accompanied with the game's art style, it's genuinely amazing to view, and to say it's a beautiful looking game is somewhat underselling the charm it has. Beyond the visual appeal or overall size of Afterimage's areas, the gameplay within them plays a significant role in the game's quality. This is especially the case given how long the game is, as you'll be spending hours exploring, fighting, and revisiting these locations. Firstly, each region is filled with a wide variety of enemies that you must either defeat or avoid in order to progress. The game retains this variety that is noticeable in other parts of the game through enemy design, with each area introducing entirely new enemies that contrast from those in previous zones. These enemies often reflect the visual elements of their environments, both in color and attack style. Altogether, there are about 160 unique enemies, ranging from standard opponents with simple patterns and low health to powerful boss battles that drop key upgrades or unlock different endings. Considering the quick movement at your disposal and the similarly quick moves of the majority of enemies, it's enjoyable dashing and jumping around enemies to dodge their fast attacks to try to defeat them. As mentioned many times, these areas are massive, so the number of enemies alongside different styles helps to draw in to encourage players to keep playing throughout the area. Going to the movement side of the worlds, Afterimage has a copious amount of platforming and requires you to regularly jump and dash to higher areas or ones directly across from you. Fortunately, the movement system perfectly coincides with this wide variety of platforming the game offers. Movement in Afterimage feels extremely fluid, as Renee's starting speed is fast, in addition to the movement animations, the jump, the dash being swift. Thus, you can chain them together in rapid succession, emphasizing the game's fast-paced gameplay. I rarely play platforming games. However, it was great to quickly move from each block and attempt to dodge the obstacles. Moreover, while there are certainly challenging platforming or swimming sequences, often involving spikes or traps that alternate between active and inactive states, the gameplay becomes far more cohesive and satisfying once you begin unlocking new exploration abilities such as double jump or wall clinging. An important thing to highlight is that in normal mode, the game does not reduce your health while colliding with obstacles or falling. This helps reduce frustration when navigating tricky sections and creates a more forgiving experience. For teleporting, saving, and healing, Afterimage follows a familiar Metroidvania style approach by having designated rest points that act as teleporters, while also allowing you to restore health, mana, and a healing spell you can use at any time. These rest points appear as vibrant trees with hanging fruit, which you can interact with to replenish your resources. It is a more engaging approach than the static save points seen in many other games, and adds a small but welcome layer of immersion. Each area contains one main tree along with several smaller ones. Both allow you to rest, but the main trees also give you the option to freely teleport between other main trees you have discovered. Teleporting from anywhere on the map requires a resting potion, an item that instantly transports you to any tree you have previously visited. These potions are inexpensive and sold by the many vendors throughout the game, making them consistently accessible. This design choice is a clear improvement over fast travel systems that only work from a handful of specific locations. Having to walk long distances just to reach a teleporter or backtrack entirely by walking is tedious, especially in a Metroidvania where visiting older areas with new abilities is a core part of progression, being commonplace. Afterimage avoids this problem through its movement and teleportation mechanics, removing an unnecessary level of inconvenience that is typical in the genre. Moreover, there's a set number of collectibles in each area, totaling 825 items. They range from chests that drop weapons or other equipment, to new abilities, to items related to upgrading Renee's stats, to key items that needed to continue progressing the game's story, and acquire the many endings the game offers. This is certainly more collectibles than your average game, so if you're a completionist, you will undoubtedly find it entertaining discovering them all. One of my personal favorites of these different collectibles is where you need to destroy this blue gem looking thing to absorb dude that can be used to purchase items from merchants. It's amusing seeing the dude emit from the rock and then walking around the surrounding area to fully collect all of them. Generally, these collectibles are straightforward to spot by simply exploring every area, but a portion of them are well hidden. For instance, they're commonly concealed by challenging platforming in which you have to complete to attain the item. These are typically the hardest platforming moments the game offers, so it feels rewarding finishing it for the item. In particular, the jumping required is often combined with these helicopter animals. To traverse over the spikes back to a platform or achieve a higher area, you need to bounce off them. This is sometimes in a sequence where a few are lined up together or directly above another. These creatures add another element to jumping, and again, since the movement is quick, it's fun to swiftly move from each animal to reach a destination with a reward. Apart from platforming, there are regularly in locations that you need to crouch, then slide across the ground to attain. Following reaching the end of the passage, you're presented a chest or other item to gather. They occasionally even reveal larger areas to explore, leading to additional gameplay and rewards to acquire. These are usually more well hidden than the platforming, as they're covered by the environment, such as trees or floors. Taking into account the amount of collectibles available, there's a decent amount of secret ones to find. That definitely adds interest to each area. Overall, Afterimage's world is both content-rich and beautiful visually. While playing, I often forgot I was playing an indie game because of how polished it felt and how much there was to do. Even after finishing the main story, I found myself exploring every region in an attempt to reach 100% completion, and not once did it feel boring. The constant presence of enemies and enjoyable movement system kept the experience engaging throughout the rest of my playtime. Exploration and gameplay are where Afterimage truly excels, being completely uncontested among other games of its kind. This great exploration the game offers naturally ties into another area of the game, progression. Progression is undeniably one of the most important parts of any game, especially in Metroidvanias where it's emphasized by a variety of abilities, where certain ones have major implications when unlocked, and the amount of backtracking that can be done. Afterimage follows this trend of primarily focusing on progression, having multiple progression systems, with some being unconventional for the genre. The main one is a leveling system that is relatively simple compared to the others. The maximum level you can reach is 99, and you gain experience by defeating enemies. Killing harder enemies provides higher amounts of experience points, corresponding to the level that you can see in the bestiary, which displays the many types of enemies. There's nothing too much to discuss here, so let's transition to the abilities attainable, called Afterimages. Afterimages are the abilities you unlock throughout the game at various points. They encompass a wide range of effects, including dive kicking, being used to quickly return to the ground or bounce off those helicopter animals, which as you discussed earlier, impacts platforming, and effects that are less universal, like the Afterimage called Scavenger, automatically collecting dudes in your vicinity. These Afterimages are separated into categories. The main ones you unlock are the core Afterimages that are always available and cannot be turned off or modified. They are typically acquired at major points in the game, such as defeating an extremely difficult boss or speaking to an important NPC. Conversely, the remaining Afterimages are ones that need to be equipped. Your selection could be a combination of any of them. These are more straightforward to locate, often be on the ground to pick up. They are definitely less practical than the main ones, however, they permit customization and variety, being a common theme for equipment, as well as the game as a whole. Overall, there are 36 different Afterimages to use between the two types. Once you collect all the seed items, you can equip a total of 6 of the non-main ones, meaning 22 Afterimages can be used altogether, being a massive ability pool and giving you multiple effects to trigger. An important thing to note regarding Afterimages is a strong connection to backtracking, as many of the game's earlier regions contain areas that are inaccessible without specific Afterimages. For instance, elevated platforms in the early game are typically impossible to reach until you unlock abilities such as the triple jump, wall cleaning, or the super jump. This design choice further highlights backtracking, making it a natural and rewarding part of the experience. Take into account how many after images are scattered across the massive world. It's satisfying to discover a new one and then think about the places you can revisit to collect hidden items or progress toward fully completing the game. Both types of after images are a core part of progression, movement, and combat, and the ability to mix and match them not only allows for new playstyles, but also encourages deeper exploration for uncovering secrets. Another part of progression is upgrading your equipment, including your weapons and magical items. Luckily, it's pretty simple compared to other games, which corresponds to the fact that there's multiple upgrades necessary for items, and there's a ton of items to upgrade. After you attain an item, you can locate it in your inventory to upgrade with the dues you accumulated from exploring the world. Following you upgrade an item, it changes the stats attached to the item, such as the damage or stats you gain from equipping it. It can be upgraded a total of 3 times for maximum effectiveness. This system is favorable as it provides an effortless way to upgrade equipment as opposed to a complicated quest. Additionally, since dues are everywhere, there's plenty to collect to upgrade a multitude of weapons, incentivizing you to experiment with different builds, as you can easily upgrade new weapons or items and not lose an excessive amount of power. Finally, the talent tree is a main part of progression as well, consisting of an assortment of stats and bonuses to the different weapon types. There are over 200 talents to be unlocked and upgraded, with some related more to your desired playstyle than others. For example, a portion of the talents relate to adding entire effects of weapons that can completely alter how to utilize the weapon. To upgrade these several talents, you need talent points that are found mostly from chests or picked up from the ground. Considering the size and number of talents, there's seemingly endless paths to take when upgrading it, emphasizing the choice you have for the game's gameplay. Ultimately, progression in Afterimage is immensely diverse. There's even more systems that I didn't mention, but only further add to the appeal of playing through this long game. Now let's transition to an essential aspect of great gameplay, being combat, where Afterimage transcends the majority of games due to its weapon and enemy variety, in addition to its fluidness. Beginning with weapon types, the game has 6 weapon types being swords, whips, blades, greatswords, scythes, and dual blades. They all have highly different gameplay styles, as the attacks have contrasting ranges or speeds. To make use of these weapon types, Afterimage allows you to equip 2 weapons, giving you the chance to match your desired weapon's weaknesses and strengths in combination with the substats they have. Switching between these weapons is surprisingly seamless, and flows well into the combat that changes from the fastness but lower damage of the sword to the slower but higher damage of the greatsword, for example. As I said earlier, these are supplemented by the challenge trees, which introduces new abilities to them with button presses, diversifying them to a greater degree. This is further accentuated by weapons of higher rarity having skills associated with them, such as another weapon skill or a general effect to aid in combat. Extended beyond weapons, there are also a selection of magical items you can equip, ranging from spellbooks to wands to scrolls to staffs, each capable of casting unique spells to deal damage. The variety remains consistent here, with spells that feel distinct from one another. A particularly appealing example is the Wand of Owl, which summons another version of you to strike the enemy in quick succession. While these magical items are not too useful, with it being entirely possible to complete the game without ever using them, they still add another layer to combat and allow for more personalized playstyles. For an indie title, this level of variety is impressive, and experimenting with new equipment while testing its effectiveness against a wide range of enemies was always engaging. For enemy variety, we already touched on how it stands as one of the game's strongest points. However, most of that discussion focused on the common enemies you encounter throughout the world, rather than the boss battles. Boss fights in Afterimage over the game highlights its challenge and creativity. They often match the player's movement speed, resulting in fast-paced battles where you are constantly dashing and jumping to evade attacks. The damage they deal is usually ridiculous, making it essential to stay on the move to avoid being forced into a vulnerable spot by healing. There are a total of 48 bosses in the game, each featuring impressive designs and same level of polish in their animations as you see in the game's other areas. Many Metroidvanias thrive off difficult gameplay, and Afterimage does an amazing job at incorporating memorable bosses by sustaining its theme of variety and fluidity. Overall, Afterimage's combat is smooth, and it develops throughout the game to become even better with new Afterimages, skills, and weapons. For the final section of this video, let's briefly touch on Afterimage's story. Now, I'm not going to go too into depth to avoid spoilers, and because it's extremely confusing to nearly everyone who played the game, including myself. Similar to other indie games, it struggles telling a cohesive story due to how the game is structured and concentrating on gameplay. Most indie games take this route to cut costs and long development times. And Afterimage is seemingly no different. Nevertheless, it still has a positives among the numerous downsides people typically point out when discussing the game. One of the first things that stood out to me was the presence of voice acting for the majority of character dialogue. This is a rare feature in indie games, largely because such games often contain minimal dialogue and because voice work can be costly for teams working with small budgets. As a result, most indie titles are completely silent in terms of spoken lines, relying solely on music and sound effects for immersion. I was definitely not expecting voice acting when I first started playing, but it was a pleasant surprise that made the story and characters far more engaging. While Afterimage still features fewer dialogue sequences than the average story-driven game, the performances are excellent and improve the narrative. The multiple endings attainable is another great part of the story. Afterimage has a staggering 10 endings to discover, each leading to new outcomes for the story. It only adds to the abundance of content in the game, and some of them have surprising moments. Despite its strengths, the game still suffers from a convoluted story. The dialogue often uses overly complex wording, which many people attribute to localization problems, since the script was translated from Chinese to English, which is notoriously difficult. Combined with the game's ambition to tell a great story, filled with numerous characters, plot points, and lore to uncover, this leaves many players confused about what is actually happening even after reaching the true ending. This is easily Afterimage's weakest aspect, and for those who prioritize story in games, its method of storytelling can be frustrating. However, if you could follow along or choose to focus on the gameplay and exploration, the game's strongest qualities still excels. To wrap this video up, Afterimage is a stunning 2D Metroidvania with a massive world filled with different types of collectibles to discover, limitless options for equipment and playstyles to defeat the many enemies, and a long but somewhat confusing narrative. It's personally become one of my favorite indie games I ever played, and I enjoyed it much more than some of the other Metroidvanias that I consider to be better. I can't recommend this game enough if you haven't played it, especially since it frequently drops to $6 during sales, which is an absolute steal. It's a truly special game that deserves higher recognition for its ambitiousness and grand scale, making it feel like you're not even playing an indie game. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.